Yes, greetings, greetings, greetings. You are listening to and watching RastafariJews right here on the YouTubes. Here. Greetings, welcome. Shalom, Chaverim. Baruchim, Chabayim. Yes. So I'd like to get right into this particular issue right here. And it's a follow-up to Ashriel Moore. I think one of the leaders of the African Israelites of Jerusalem. Give thanks right there. Has done some really great videos on the YouTubes. This most recent one we just checked out. We first had checked it out a little bit earlier. I think it was on Aquarius Waves. Okay, here's the still right here. We had checked out this. This particular video right here. Palestinian anti-blackness. Exposing this right here. And this is a very interesting video right here. And Ashriel, you have a very interesting take on this particular video. Here's a still from one of his other videos, Ashriel Moore here. We identify as the children, right, of the tribe of Judah. And Chaverim, brothers, Talmudim, fellow Talmudim, what have you heard us consistently say? We, the black Jews of the Lion of the tribe of Judah.
Lion of Judah.
Ken. Amen. Oh. So, also want to give thanks to Queen Malka Makeda, also to heal up, heal up Mishpacha, Shalano over there as well, the family over there, in our prayers always, because Kulano Ibrahim, we are Hebrews, Kulano Ibrahim. That's what this right here says right here. Kulano, all of us, Ibrahim, Hebrews, Ibrahim, then we have Ibrahim, right? So, here, we'd like to address this particular video right here. It's this one right here. This is the still that Ashriel Moore has. And the fuller name of the video, just want to give the Chaverim information on this. Hopefully check it out. It's on Ashriel Moore's channel, I think about 4 to 5 days ago. And its title is Palestinian, quote, end quote, quote, open quote, Palestinian, end quote, loses, full cap, loses it after being confronted by capital black friends about racism in Palestine. This is the name of this particular video here by Ashriel Moore. And it's a very good video. Just got to fully find out that you have a channel. I should have known. You probably did. It didn't. Excuse me if I didn't ask, but came across one of your videos the other day and it was very, very interesting. And then came across this particular video. And we first had seen this video on another YouTuber's platform. I think his name is Aquarius Wave. Like to applause for Aquarius Wave, right? Yes, Aquarius Wave. And he had basically just touched on it briefly, gave some commentary to it, and was very interesting. I tried to look up the video, couldn't find the video, and Ashriel gives some important insights into this particular video. Before we go through it a little bit, his video, and just the part where he plays her video, because it is said that the video is no longer found, right? She pulled it down, right? And it's probably a scam, you know what I mean? Basically, there's a lot of scamming. There's a lot of lying going on. I mean, just straight up, just to keep it, it's over the Lashon Hara, the evil tongue. And you're going to hear some of this in this segment here that we're going to go into right here. Just a kind of a brief, brief highlight, just a little reaction, for commentary, like the fair use, for commentary, for, critique, also education and learning. We can learn by these things. But this is the title right here on the actual thumbnail, Palestinian Anti-Blackness. Because we hear, I was looking at some articles and it was talking about, Palestinian racism. I'm like, wow, racism, right? Ain't that something, racism? But what she says is so telling. I could see why they pulled it down. Like they thought, when one think that it will be one way and it turns out to be another way. This is what happened with this particular video, and this is why I believe that it was taken down. But before we get into that video, let's just get into this right here brief. So let's just go through this, just briefly get up to the particular still. I want to just read it and put this into context, into context. So here I think it's a still from, I think it's Instagram, Ashriel Moore's Instagram, understanding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict through the unique lens of the Afrocentric communities in Israel. And I don't even hear any of, so many of the so-called pro-Palestinian, here in America, over here, we're still in the North Country, our brothers, they have done their aliyah, they have made aliyah, and they have like returned, or one might say repatriated, as it were, but this is an important context to keep in mind, understanding it through that lens. And it's like we're looking through like somebody else's, lens, somebody else's spectacles, and we're getting a totally wrong view, right? Thought you knew about Afro, right? Palestinians. There's another video of his as well. We identify as the children, right, of the tribe of Judah. As I said, what do you hear us saying? We, the black Jews, of the Lion of the tribe of Judah. About the tribe of Yehuda, right? Not Yahadu, but the tribe of Yehuda, right? So even over here, Kulanu, all of us, right? Kul anu, us, Kulanu, right? Ivrim, right? Some would say Kulanu, Ivrim. Some say in modern Hebrew, Kulanu, Ivrim, right? And more of the ancient Afro-Shemitic, right? Full voice, right? Kulanu, Ibrahim, right? Ibrahim, Kulanu. All of us are Hebrews. That's what that says right there, there. But let's get to our main one, Arab colonization. They don't even speak about it in whispered tones, right? But we have to, wake up, right? Wake up, just woke up, right? And many ones who are pro or have kind of got caught up in this this neoliberal agenda, right? Especially as of late, recently, since the Simchat Torah, what they call October 7th, the Simchat Torah. But this she was pro Palestinian, and then she woke up, right? Then she woke up. Right? See, it's the half of the story, as Ion's Rastafari say, even we RastafariJews, the half of the story has not been told, right, till now. So let's build until on this right here, showing some of the stills right here. Now this is her, right? This is her right there, right? And you see Ashriel there, as the video plays. We're gonna get into this right now, right? This is interesting. When we say even over here, hashtag FBA, Israelite hashtag, what I'm saying? FBA, they're not like us. They are not like us, right? Let's keep that in mind, right? All right. Something about this right here, I just leave it on the screen. Maybe we'll get into a little commentary now, maybe a little bit later, because I heard people talking about this. I came across it. And this applies. There's a comedian. She's a Yehudit from Ethiopia, right? From Kush. And she was speaking about being black, right, and the racism that she gets from being black, right? She's a Yehudit. One might say she's an Ethiopian Jew, one might say that, or a black Jew, or a Yehudi who happens to be black, however ones want to articulate it, and how she gets it from both sides, so to dislike certain ethnicities is said to be racist, and to see Yehudi, right, Jews, Ha-Yehudim, as equal is anti-Semitic. But it's something about the ain't like us, right? But really, it's that they don't like us, right? So here, right, let's get to this right here, why they really hate Israel, right? There's an interesting correspondence of, when it speaks about like blacks and Jews, especially our experience in America, right? And they're trying to rewrite history, right? Or no, they're trying to rewrite the truth. You know, they're trying to lie, basically, right? And this is what you're going to hear in the portion of this clip right here we're about to show, right? But why doesn't Black Lives Matter speak out against discrimination of Afro-Palestinians in Palestinian society? And this video shows us, but we're going to show some highlight samples of when you do speak out, you know, what is the consequence of speaking out, right? Okay, so right here. All right, let's get to it right over here. Here we go. This is it right here. 27 million black people. What we say, Africans, black people, you know, some amount of semantics there, but 27 million black people are still owned as Ebed, like Abdul, as Abdullahs, Abdul, right? Slaves today in Mohammedan, right, or we could say Muslim, Mohammedan countries. No liberal, right? See, the liberals have really pushed a lot of black people kind of like, oh, you see, the Jews, the state of Israel, this is racist, so forth and so on, because they already got one with counterfeit Christianity, one must recall, you know, so by getting one with counterfeit Christianity and replacement theology, right? So then it's easy. So it's like one lie, one deception after the next. There's another one here that says something right here. I think it's from one of the other Israelite camps. It's over here. It's not so clear, right? Not so clear right here, but you might have seen this before, right? You've seen this before right here, right? Arab invasion, 641. Muslims conquer, 635. Conquer, 635. Conquer, 638. Muslims conquer, 636. 20, I don't know what this is about, but you see it on the right-hand side. The different captivities that the Beit Yisrael, the house, the Beta Israel, has gone through, the Beta Israelites have gone through, from the Mizraim, to the Assyrians, right, Ashur, right, to the Babylonians, to the Persian, right, to the Greek, right, to the Roman, right, and then coming down to the American captivity. Now this right here is very accurate, but when we look into the details between the so-called Roman and the American, and some of our people not getting caught up over here. Remember, the scripture says to the four corners of the earth, right? That Israel will be scattered to the four corners of the earth. Now, I'm giving this as a kind of a background and a context, right? A contextualization, right? And some of these other topics, like over here, this is the interesting article right here. Black Palestinians, right? You know, face subtle racism in Gaza, right? So Obaid, who believes his ancestors came from Sudan, so he's not even too sure. It's like even us over here in the Americas after like 400 something years, you know, or the Americas and the Caribbean. So Americas, North and South, and the Caribbean, right? Now in that divide and conquer, now for we have to unite around truth, right? But he doesn't know where his ancestors come from, right? He believes so, it could be true, right? But he says that he has to work twice as hard to prove himself. How many of us, right, have heard this? And I've heard this from our parents, and this is a part of our testimony, once lost, now found. Just want to point that out. But notice they call it right here subtle racism in Gaza, right? In Gaza or in Gaza, right? But here, let's get right into it, right? So, you know, there's many ones who cape for them. You know, many ones who are caping for them, like this Lamont dude right here. You know, some things, you know, I watch him, I hear what he says and everything like that. But this is like a big mission of his, and he did a documentary. I'd like to check it out, see what he puts in it, whether he really keeps it, as you say, a buck, or whether he's kind of like caping, right? No, that's cap, as we say. Black support for Palestine. So there are ones who are like on the super bandwagon, you know what I mean? And they want to get all of us on. But some are waking up, you know, some are waking up. You know, you got to wake up, right? They have experienced prejudice with some Palestinian Arabs referring to them as slaves. Abid, right? The Abid, slaves. You see what I'm saying? Slaves. That's what we're speaking about, right? Right? See, we know about so-called white supremacy, but what about the white, pale, red Arabs? What about what they did to so-called African and black people? And that this is still going on. This is one of the things that this woman, I don't know what her name is or whatnot like that, but we're about to get into it right here. You know, this might be like the intro right here, but definitely check out Ashriel Moore's video, right? And to their neighborhood as slaves' prisons, right? Habs al-Abid, right? And their color has led, we're talking about black people, right? Against Afro-Palestinian, they're what? Their color. What do you mean, black? Are we talking about black? Oh, okay, right. Has led to objections against them marrying Palestinians with lighter skin. In other words, with white, white so-called Arabs, because they call themselves Palestinian, but many of their roots are in the other Arab nations and countries. That's a whole other matter right there, right? But here, we want to just give you this as an overview, right? As a context. As a context and an overview. Right, so here, with that in mind, let's get into the vid. So here we go right here. This is the one: Palestinian loses it after being confronted by black friends. Friends. Right, so here, quote, Palestinian, end quote, loses it after being confronted by black friends about racism in Palestine. Isn't this the whole point? Right? Isn't it the whole point? See, when we tell people about the history, and then the fact that even slavery in many parts of the Arab, Mohammedan, and even Palestinian, all that was a gateway, was like a highway, for it. If we go back into not so ancient time, but let's get into this right here.
Welcome back to the page. I'm your host, Ashriel Moore, the ambassador of the African Diaspora Collective here in Israel. Today, I want to just share a few thoughts with you on a video that was sent to me, wherein you have a Palestinian American activist who allegedly brought a group of people to the Palestinian territories to visit and to volunteer. And amongst them, you had a group of people of African ancestry who they refer to as African Americans who had come along with her as well. And she's ranting in this video and condemning these people of African ancestry because of the response that they had to experiences that they had actually had while on this trip with her. And first of all, let's listen to it, and then I'll share with you my thoughts.
I certainly did not expect to walk away with racial tensions between myself and the black people in our group. And that's really disappointing for me to admit because...
Pause for a moment. See, this is something that we've experienced, especially those of us who are descendants of those for the past 400, give or take, years here in the Americas and the Caribbean, here in this Western world. Right? The way she says black, I just have to pause it right there. The way black people. I mean, it's like, you really been around black people and you're going to say black like that, right? Let's go over here.
I certainly did not expect to walk away with racial tensions between myself and the black people in our group. And that's really disappointing for me to admit because I was so excited to go on this trip with black Americans because I was always under the impression that black people will be our greatest allies because they understand more than anybody what it's like to live under occupation, what it's like to be oppressed and racially profiled.
Pause right here. So she expected. See, this is what happens to liberals. Remember we showed you the other one about the millions, of black people, right? I don't know if we have to go back to that again just to show you that, right? I mean, look what happened with Libya. You remember Gaddafi, right? Madman Gaddafi, and a lot of people is like, caught up. I don't know if it's just the kind of light skin and the so-called good here, the other here. You know what I'm saying? And my people over here, we understand what hopefully you understand what I'm speaking about, right? Because she expected, right, we to be the greatest allies. But let's hold up. What about the allies for us? You know what I'm saying? In fact, we get to find that when many come even to the West, that they utilize the very same things of our ancestors, right, for their, how can you say, their ethno-religion, their ethno-religious identity, so if you go against them because they're Mohammedans or Muslim, this is racism. I mean, this is actually, is it against a religion, right, or is it against a race, right? Is it Palestinian? But she expected us, right? You know, she said she had an expectation that we would be, right? Her, not her, but, you know, for the quote, Palestinian, end quote, you know, their greatest, you know, that's a pseudo, it's actually a pseudonym. I just want to point out that's really a pseudonym, right? So a lot of what's being fought over this, and well, about Israel, right? But this we have in the scripture, where we just talk about the name, place, location, right? And we talk about Palestinian name, place, and alleged location. This is a pseudonym, right? When we stack it up, right? Just on the basic facts, the bare facts. This is not the aspect of so much the Israel and Palestinian conflict. This is concerning this particular woman. If anybody knows her name, you know, what's her name? You know, how she loses it after being confronted, right, by black friends. But I want you to listen carefully. I think Ashriel, he really hits it, he nails it on the head, right, in his commentary. May not even get into all of that just yet, but please check out the rest. You see the name, Ashriel Moore, and his quote, Palestinian, end quote, right, loses it after being confronted by black, right, black friends about racism in Palestine. I was about to go there. Yeah, I was about to go there and say, you know, some of our people, you know, some of us will say, it's just the way you say black. It's like even with the N-word, whether you say the or you say the right? You say the right? Then you really make a big error, right? But let's get more.
During the trip, it felt like some people were too busy playing Oppression Olympics to fully...
Hold on. Did you hear? Did you hear? She said some people were too busy playing Oppression Olympics. What the hell? What the hell? You know, what the fraud, right? What the fluck? You know what I mean? No, we didn't let the algorithms know. We said fluck. Like you pluck, fluck. Yeah, fluck. Yeah, it's an L, F-L. You know what I'm saying? Right? She's talking about playing Oppression Olympics. Some people are too busy. Remember how she begins off? So she somehow, maybe this is what they teach in these liberalism, you know, this is what they teach in the miseducation. You know, what did Patronizing Selassie, better known as Robert Nesta Marley, or even better known as Bob Marley, what did he say? He said, building churches and university, graduating thieves, you know, thieves and murderers, right? So she somehow had a preconceived notion, right, that, oh, you see them black people? They're going to support us. Why? Why is that? Because they go through racism, oppression. I don't know what version or perversion. You see, a lot of ones are just dealing with some of the maybe most recent couple of decades or so. You know, even we're not saying that this is not, right? But this is nowhere compared to what our ancestors went through. You see what I'm saying? So she's seeing some things and she's believing, well, you know, them black people, you know, they're going to be our greatest supporter. See, black folks, let's learn something from the panhandling, African scamming, and all these things that we're being scammed, right? Black people are being scammed, right? More ways than one. Are black people being scammed? Palestinian scam against black people? I mean, she's being confronted. She loses it after being what? Confronted by black friends, right? You know, black friends. And it's all about the racism. I don't know if we get that far in this video, right? About racism in Palestine. So in the eyes, through the spectacles, remember what Garvey was said to have said, right? You know, about through the spectacles, right? How we're going to look at it through the spectacles. You know what I mean? Through the spectacles. The Palestinians have their struggle, right? Hey, so be it. But she has an expectation. It's like us saying that, well, we have an expectation that y'all will be supporting us, right, in our struggle, right, you know, and speaking up when things happen against us, you know, when we're out there. You know, how many of them have said, you know what, those black people, right, they're the Jews, right, they're the Israelites, you know, because there's many ones. So how about the Israelites say, you know what, we expected y'all to be supporting us. Do they speak about that? Right? But she has an expectation that we are going to support her. So she already began from a false, right? You know, a false bottom, a false premise, You know what I mean? But let's
grasp the experiences of Palestinians living in Palestine. Some people came on the trip with a very limited understanding of the Palestinian people and the Palestinian cause, which is problematic in and of itself. But the most problematic thing was the fact that some people were applying a Western lens of racial dynamics to a place where it does not apply.
Pause. Did you hear that? Did y'all hear that? She says, because there's a lot that's in here. This is no wonder they took it down. Thank you, Ashra, for letting us know that, you know, that you really couldn't find it. And it seems fake, it seems staged, it seems made up. And this was actually intended for one effect. But when people really got to sit down and watch it, and also give thanks again to Aquarius Wave. Check out Aquarius Wave. He also addresses this as well. Has her on the thumbnail and everything. That's a very, it's short. I think both of the videos are shorter than mine right here, because I want to go into this a little bit more, right? This is very good. This is just a couple of minutes from the intro, right? Couple of minutes from the intro. So she has this expectation, but let's go back for a moment. Right, and it's
racially profiled. But during the trip, it felt like some people were too busy playing Oppression Olympics to fully grasp the experiences of Palestinians living in Palestine. Some people came on the trip.
Pause. Has she grasped the experience of black people? See, it's almost like a narcissistic, you know, it's almost like some type of narcissism, political, oh wow, political narcissism. Right, you know, political narcissism, this liberal political narcissism. Like we are going to be able to grasp, almost like we are. There used to be this thing called, what they call it back in Europe, they call it the sin eater. The sin eater, like there was these kind of priests that went around like eating people's sins. You know what I mean? Almost like you taking other people's burdens. You know, hasn't she heard the old Negro spiritual? Lay my burden down by the riverside. You know, I'm gonna lay my burden down, right? But no, they expect us to take on their burdens, right? But notice, everything is what she expected of these so-called, you know, these alleged quote black friends, right? These black people, right? And she talked about playing the Oppression Olympics. When I heard that, I'm like, is this serious? Right? Is this like a spoof video? You know what I mean? You know, like a crank call. Is this like a crank video?
With a very limited understanding of the Palestinian people and the Palestinian cause, which is problematic in and of itself.
See, they want us to understand their cause. And you know, there's a lot of our people, right? And I hope that they're waking up, because, you know, when this whole thing, the Simchat Torah, you know, or the joy of the law, the joy of the Torah, that's what it was for the Torah observant. Yehudim, like Judahites, Israelites, and Jews, right? But this is what they call the October 7th, right? So that we are to have this understanding. So what we do, we're not struggling with what we are struggling with, right? But she says some very astounding things that not only do we detect here a kind of like a political narcissistic, narcissistic behavior, narcissistic personality. Right now, this is just her here, but I submit to you, it's not just her. She is the tip of the iceberg. In other words, from studying this video, no wonder they pulled it down. If you really study this, this is, yo, bro, Ashriel Moore, thank you for putting this up there. You know, really, once again, thank you. You know what I mean? Because I was looking for the video, Aquarius Wave, he had it a little bit there, but you know, you give it a little more full of the video, you get us to hear the fullness of it, and there's so many points, and how you could just sit back and just allow her to rant. Well, of course, I understand what you did, that's why we're doing it this way, where we're kind of just stopping it for a moment and saying, did you hear that? And what does that mean? It's about not just getting knowledge and information. This is what social media is about. Okay, there's a bunch of knowledge and information, but it's to get some intel from it. Like almost like not just to have a bunch of food, right? But to chew the food, enjoy the food, right? And it's to critically think, right? Critical thinking about what's going on here. Because you can see how there's an appeal, right, to a kind of a emotionalism, right? You know, a feelings of emotionalism. You know what this is like doing, brothers and sisters? You know how they talk about, some people talk about like white guilt and they say that some black people may play on white guilt. This is what is alleged, you know, and no doubt there are some that might do this. You know, the whole white guilt, make white people feel guilty, and therefore, you know, like it's very weak in and of itself. But in the sense, what she is seeking to do is almost like to play, it's like the reverse, right? The reverse, right? Using these you know, how can we say, tactics, right? Using these tactics in this, right? In this. Let's go on a little bit more.
But the most problematic thing was the fact that some people were applying a Western lens of racial dynamics to...
Pause for a moment. She's saying the most problematic thing, because we don't, these black people that, I thought when you listen carefully, it's like, well, she's working, they was working together. These are black people that she knows, because she alleges like she's so much part of the black struggle and she kind of really knows it so well and so forth and so on. This kind of what it talks about in the I think it's Michelet Shlomo, it speaks about, you know, like three wise in your own eyes. Right? Everything she's judging it. She's like the judge, jury, and almost like executioner. And that is the problem, not with her, right? But also, right, you know, with her people. Check it out. She's saying that these black people, right, were applying, the black people, the alleged black people that came there in this story, right? And maybe it did happen, or maybe it's a fake, maybe she's regurgitating somebody else's experience and she did this video right here. However, it is, right? We are applying a Western lens, right? But she's saying that, well, we as black people should understand because of all that we have gone through in America. You know what I'm saying? But America is over in the West. You see what I'm saying? As where she and the Palestinians and what she's representing over there in the East, right? So she's trying to say that, well, we can't look at it from our real experience. You know what I mean? It's almost like to make a golem. I don't know if you know what a golem. I don't want to get into the golem, right? But like make us like a golem, like, you know what I mean? You know, like almost like a Frankenstein, like to recreate it, to remold black people. And see, black folks have been, especially this generation, been caught up on a lot of it, especially the social media. You know what I mean? In the social media world in this time right now. But here's the good news. Ones are wise to it. Because even the alleged black friends or black people in her, you know, in her story, right? Let's just rewind this a little bit, because she says they were applying and others apply. You know, when we look at the Palestinians, we can't look at the history. Can we look at the history? She's going to even try to debunk the history, right, of enslavement of black and African people. You know, calling them Kushi. Kush is Ethiopia, but Kushi is a way that they call one's nigger, right? One nigger. Right, and you know, oh man, I said it. I said the N word, right? The Kushi, right? Kushi, right? And it's also shared from even some of the Jews, right? You know, who ain't right, but also this is what has been said, right? And we, you know, there's a whole history here. People are just not really aware, and it's so easy to know. That's why I pointed out Gaddafi. Right, because that picture that we showed in the earlier part, that was in Gaddafi, or post-Gaddafi Libya, right, where they have gone back into the slave trade business again, right? No lie about it, right? That's what has happened.
Grasp the experiences of Palestinians living in Palestine.
Pause. She's saying that these people don't grasp, and we have to grasp the experience of Palestinian people living in Palestine. But if you listen to her on the surface level, it's like she understands the experience of black people. What did Kendrick Lamar say? Not like us. They're not like us. They're not like us, and then we don't like us. They are trying to use us. And when we understand the history, we can use Libya, right? Just in modern day, post-Gaddafi Libya as a perfect example, right? And what's going on with real slavery is going on. I'm talking about against black people. You would think like, oh, I stepped out of a time machine. This can't be, they're filming a movie or something like that. No, this is real world. No exercise. And here's the thing. Throughout the so-called Arab and Mohammedan Muslim world, it's this silence on it because this is a part of the policy. Right? This is not like, oh, a one-off, an aberration. No, this is like part of the system. You know, we talk about systemic racism. You know, see, here's the problem. Many people talk, oh, white supremacy, and some have directed only to the so-called Anglo-European, American, white people in the West because of the recent history. But if we really look at it, the same white supremacy also applies to the so-called the Arab world, to the Arab world, right? Truth.
People came on the trip with a very limited understanding of the Palestinian people and the Palestinian cause, which is probably...
Well, wait. She's saying it's problematic, but whose fault is that? So you would get the idea, these people come on this trip. Well, where did she meet these people from? Where are they? Who are they? Right? Ashriel in his video, if you want to see the full, you know, it's not a long video. It's less time than our video, and it's very good, right? You know, basically it's a scam. The long and short of it, it's a scam, right? But it's not a scam like, okay, trying to get your money. No, this, what do they call it? Hearts and minds, right? It's a what? It's a heart and mind campaign. So she's saying that, well, these black people, they didn't have a very good understanding about the Palestinian people, about the Palestinian cause, about the Palestinian this, the Palestinian that. And, well, you black people, you got to understand. You must understand. Where does this narcissistic expectation really come from? Right? Satan? I mean, no, where does it come from?
Problematic in and of itself. But the most problematic thing was the fact that some people were applying a Western lens of racial dynamics to a place where it does not apply. I am not...
Pause for a moment. So she's telling us that it was applying a Western, lens, a Western dynamic. Right? So there's racism in the West. Is she saying that racism in the West is different than racism in the East? Is this what she's saying? That we have experienced racism in the West. And when we look at what's going on in the East or in Palestine, in that area over there, and when we see racism, this is what happened for friends, the black friends. They basically saw through the hypocrisy, right? They basically saw through the hypocrisy exposed to them. And they were vocal. And this is what she's allegedly reacting to.
But during the trip, it felt like some people were too busy playing Oppression Olympics to fully grasp the experiences of Palestinians living in Palestine. Some people came on the trip with a very limited understanding of the Palestinian people and the Palestinian cause, which is problematic in and of itself. But the most problematic thing was the fact...
Does she understand black people? Does she understand the black cause, right? Or even the because of black people? Does she understand? Is she being honest, right, about the Arab? Because they say Palestinian, they are Arab, and Arab are Palestinian. Don't let them fool you, right? That's problematic. But here, get this.
That some people were applying a Western lens of racial dynamics to a place where it does not apply. I am not going...
Wait. So... in the West, they were racist against black people. One of the reasons, right, and everything else that happened, right, based on the evidence, right, because they were not white people, and based on their color, and based on the differences, some of the, the physiological differences, the so-called, quote, racial, end quote, differences. So she's saying we look over there and see some of those same white supremacist Arab. You see, because they have a white supremacist Arab mentality, and not many are really able to truthfully even speak on it. There are some, right? But many are not able to truthfully speak on it, right? She goes on.
I'm going to sit here and deny that anti-blackness exists in every single part of the world. But the issue of...
Look at it. Instead of her focusing and saying, yes, there were, see, because she had that attitude with these, imaginary so-called black friends, if she really had that sort of attitude, which you could say, you know what? Yes, there have been historical things very bad. Like they cannot and they will not acknowledge it. Now, see, here's the thing for us as so-called black people, right? Well, if you really begin to understand this, you're going to begin to have a little different view, right, about a bigger picture, right? And see, Ashriel and even the other Afrocentric communities of our people that are over there, right, in that land, and that we should pray for them as well. Like, for example, we got Trump over here, and before we had Biden and whoever else becomes the president, so forth and so on, but we still live over here. Sometimes things seem a little better. Sometimes things are a little worse. Depends on the government, depends on the policies. And because we have Trump, well, let's just go. Where we gonna go, right? Oh, Biden's coming back, right? Oh, where we gonna go, right? And not saying there's not places to go, but this kind of craziness, right? Let's go on.
Race is much different in Palestine than in most other places in the world. In Palestine, Palestinians of all colors are undoubtedly the most oppressed people. In Palestine, a non-Palestinian place where it does not apply. I am not going to sit here and deny that anti-blackness exists in every single part of the world.
Wait, you said I'm not going to sit here and deny that anti-blackness does not exist? Did I get that right? Let's go back for a moment. Let's see.
Applying a Western lens of racial dynamics to a place where it does not apply. I am not going to sit here and deny that anti-blackness exists in every single part of the world.
I'm not going to deny that anti-blackness exists. Right. Okay, that there's anti-blackness everywhere is what she's trying to say.
But the issue of race is much different in Palestine than in most.
But why is it much different? The issue of race is much different in Palestine. Why? Because she says so?
Other places in the world. In Palestine, Palestinians of all colors are undoubtedly the most oppressed people. In Palestine, a non-Palestinian black person is more privileged than a Palestinian of any color. And an American, black or white, is one of the most privileged people in Palestine, right beneath Israelis. Some people...
You heard that? Did you hear that right there? Did you hear what she said? Did you hear that? Did you hear what she said right there? Let's just rewind it one more time, right? Just a little bit, right? Because you really have to hear, right, what this woman is saying right here, right? It sounds like, remember the earlier parts about narcissistic, right? There's a kind of a narcissistic mentality person, not just her personally, but this whole agenda these people been on, right? Now we're hearing where there's like a competitive jealousy. All right. Yes, we said that, competitive jealousy. Now she's talking about privilege. She's talking about, what does she mean by that? Right? What does she mean? See, this means that she's not really aware. So she's looking on the outside, right? And then when these people go over there, these black people go over there and they see racism, well, yeah, it's there, but it's not what you think. It's like, you walk like a duck and talk like a duck, but it's not a duck. It's actually something else. You don't understand what it really is. The ducks over here are not like the ducks over there. You know what I'm saying?
All colors are undoubtedly the most oppressed people. In Palestine, a non-Palestinian black person is more privileged than a...
No, she said a non-Palestinian black person. Well, what about a so-called Palestinian black person? A Palestinian black person. See, we don't expect a lot of them to say this, because you go and you meet a Palestinian black person and they're so invested within the so-called Palestinian community. We don't know, we don't know the whole background. You know about Stockholm. It's what they call Stockholm syndrome, right? If you want to talk about black people in a Stockholm type of situation, so we can't really expect them. Well, why don't they just do this? You know what I mean? Understanding, right? Like she said, it's not like over here. You know what I mean?
Palestinian of any color. And an American, black or white, is one of the most privileged people in Palestine, right beneath Israelis. Some people in the group...
Wait, is the most privileged people in Palestine, whether black or white, beneath... What does she mean by privilege? You see what they're doing? They're taking popular, meme and rhetoric and logisms, like phrases and phraseology, and flipping them around and twisting up their meaning. You know what I mean? Because you can hear this kind of convoluted it's not just a convoluted liberal argument, but this is like on steroids, brothers and sisters. This is something different, right? And some of y'all might sleep on this right now, but if you notice what's going on in England, you know, England is becoming, I guess they say they're going to take over. The Mohammedans, the Muslims, the Muslims, Islamics, they said they were going to take over England. And it seems like, it's not far-fetched. I mean, we know what's going on over here in New York. We see America. There's Trump doing some things. Hey, how is it going to work out, right? What did Bob Marley say? How we and them going to, work this out?
But we're too busy victimizing themselves and taking out their anger on all the wrong people to most privileged people in power.
She's saying that the black people were too busy victimizing themselves. So they went to Palestine as black people, right, in a region that is historic for the buying or the enslaving of black people, African people, all the way into the 21st century, right? In fact, it was only in the previous century, the 20th century, that many of these Arab Mohammedan countries that many Palestinians have links, and these are Arab people. That's a whole other agenda, right? And I would agree with her partially with one thing, that many black people are not really fully informed, because if you speak to a lot of black people, right, not all, but there are so many, more than we even thought would be possible, that are like gun-ho, right, in support of the Palestinian agenda. And now this woman, this quote Palestinian, loses it.
Palestine, right beneath Israelis. Some people in the group were too busy victimizing themselves and taking out their anger on all the wrong people to...
Pause for a moment. How in the world are you victimizing yourself? See, because in their view, let me tell you something. In their view, they look at America like, almost like a fatted calf, if you understand what I'm saying. Right? Because, see, many of them, even her, right? Nobody would say, hey, she's black. Right? Gonna look at her as they would look at any black person. I mean, you have people that may come from, that may not be black like we black Americans and Americans in the Caribbean, but they come from other parts of the world, right? And even though they may be different than black Americans in the sense of their culture, their background, they may know their tribe and everything, but they are liable, right, for certain racial, encounters. You know what I mean? That many times wake them up as well, too. Do you think that what will happen, not just to black people in America, right, because of those same superficial, right, they say it's only skin deep, but even that skin deep, right, gets one into a lot of situations that are what we truly know as racism, right? What is true racism, right? And we're not even talking about the fact that if one is black and one is Yehudi, or one is black and is Jew or Israelite, you can get both the anti-Semitism, right, on both sides, mixed with the racism, as the Ethiopian Yehudi, mentioned and everything. But you know that she is not liable, right? She is not liable, right, to get, to get this same sort of racism. So how would she know it? He who feels it knows it.
In Palestine, a non-Palestinian black person is more privileged than a Palestinian of any color. And an American, black or white, is one of the most privileged people in Palestine, right beneath Israelis. Some people in the group were too...
Pause. I just got it, y'all. She's looking at legalities and law. This is what she's looking at, legalities and law. That's why you find many ones-and-ones that don't identify with us, right? Both when they are away, right, wherever they are, and when they come over here, they don't identify, right? They absolutely don't identify with us, right? You could say in the streets or in real life. You see what I'm saying? They see themselves as separate. They see themselves as better. But you know what they do? They use the laws, right? The laws that have, been hard fought and hard won, right, by black people, right, here in these Americas, right? They use these laws on their behalf, right? I heard about some ones-and-ones were claiming, some Muslims or Islamists, Arabs, they were claiming like, oh, it's racism, and they were claiming a lot of the same thing. They also use a lot of the same civil rights, quote unquote, things, right, that black people had thought right, was there to benefit them. And even when it was so-called there to benefit them, these other groups coming underneath that, right, have been able to utilize that. So when she says a black, American black, right, or any kind of American is more privileged, you have to understand this is like the same competitive jealousy with saying that, well, we want to have a state as well too, right? For all the time that they allegedly were there before the so-called other Jews or the European Jews or whoever, right, that they're calling the Jews came over, because see, they have a problem with us too. Right? And for our people like Ashriel Moore and those communities of Afrocentric, they do have a problem with them as well. Right? And in fact, right, I would even submit to you, it's even more dangerous in a sense, right, for them seeing how black people are treated even amongst the Palestinians. Why? She's going to touch on this a little bit if we can get through, just maybe a minute.
Busy victimizing themselves and taking out their anger on all the wrong people to sit with the reality that in modern day, there are some people that are more oppressed than them. One person in particular was incredibly problematic, especially considering she was one of the group leads who was hosting private conversations exclusively for the 7 black people in the group, which under almost any other circumstances I would encourage.
Pause. You hear what she's saying? Oh, thank you, Queen. Thank you, Queen. You would encourage it. For real? You would encourage, please encourage us. Yes, blackies. You're black people. And notice how she keeps saying black, right? The 7 blacks. She don't really call them, when she makes a point, she'll say American blacks, and she'll, say American, but she really don't say black Americans. Notice she doesn't say that, or American blacks, right? We usually say black Americans. They say, she want to say American blacks, right? And she's talking about privilege, right? Which is granted by law. So, but there's a competitive jealousy here. But notice what she's saying. This woman that was in the group, she's hosting private conversation. So wait, you mean if me and a group of, say, there's 7 of us, and we go to somebody's country and they want us to look around and see what they're going through and see what's happening, right? You mean we as the 7 people can't privately discuss anything amongst ourselves? We have to get permission, right, of the Palestinian queen, right, in order for us to have a conversation. She said, notice what she said, under any other circumstance, she would encourage it. Oh my gosh. They really don't see themselves. They don't see themselves. I think they put this out. It went viral. This video, when it went out, it went viral. And then they pulled it down, as Ashriel said. He couldn't find it, but he was able. Right, it was up there. And then when he caught it, or when they caught it, but then when he went back to look for it, it was gone. Right, this video was gone.
I encourage black people to create safe spaces for themselves to discuss.
Pause. What kind of patronizing shite, right? I didn't say Shiite, I say shite, right? What kind of patronizing shite is this? Under any other circumstance, I would encourage this. My God. Because I can see if this story is true or has any truth to it, and she was really a part of it as she, pretends or feigns here, then I could imagine, right, their pushback to that. I mean, come on now. Imagine we go there, right? Okay, or you and some people that go there. We're just going to go there on a trip, see what's going on. You know what I'm saying? Right? See how the so-called other half lives, right? The so-called haves and have-nots, right? We're going to go over there and check it out for ourselves, right? And you and your people say, hey, let's sit down and let's have a little private discussion. What you doing? You are discussing thing? That sounds like, see, brothers and sisters, you'll know what I'm talking about, those who know. Somebody, the babes, the young ones, the youngest might not know, but this is the same thing they were doing back on the plantation and stuff like that, right? Can you imagine a group of black people, right, over somewhere like in a huddle, right, just having a private conversation, right? You know what's going to happen, right? Massa, right, or the so-called whites, right, are going to say, these blackies, these darkies, what are they doing? They talking? right? They gathering together. It's remind me like South Africa where they had the whole thing where you couldn't, gather. They would try to prevent gatherings, right? So these are modern things, but it goes back to what happened to black people here in these here Americas. So now she has this sort of attitude like, well, under any other circumstance, I would encourage black people. I encourage you all to talk together, but not now. You can't do it now. Did she have these? Did they have these rules? When you come here, you can't have no private conversation. It is said that to some others, black people who have experienced racism by these people, you know what I'm saying? That sometimes people get their documentation taken, their passport, other things, right? I hope if these black people really did go over there, I hope they were able to return well. Right. Even when Ashriel said that, they did some research to see like, if there was any other stories out there anywhere about these mysterious 7 black people. I hope these black people are all right. No, I mean, we should really inquire, double down on her, say, hey, who are these black people? Because we got your side of the story. Great. We want to get their side of the story. Are they still over there in Palestine? Are they still over there somewhere? Right. Were they able to return? Right, back over here, because what we hear, I mean, think about what goes on in Libya and parts of North Africa, especially Libya, man. Come on now, right? Now, someone say, well, when Gaddafi was there, that wasn't going on. It wasn't going on, like you think. Let me put it like that, right? See, now it's all just exposed. All the poison that lurks in the mud just hatching now. It's just hatching. Just look, it's just hatch. It's a hatchery, right? But this is a serious situation. Black people seeking to travel, like they travel to different countries. People looking for, like refugees and finding better situation, opportunities, for business, for work, for family, whatever, to live, escaping, whatever they're escaping. They're moving around the earth like white folks and other people. They remember how the white folks were just going around in people's countries and all over the place? Nobody asked them, hey, where's your passport? Do you have a right? You know what I'm saying? So these black people want to go to Europe. Right, but when they now go and they reach North Africa, you know where they go? You know where they go? You know where they go? They go, they go to hell, but they go into slavery. You know what I mean? That's what happened. They go into slavery, straight up, and there's no doubt about it that they're going into slavery, right? Right, but she's oblivious to that, right? She's oblivious to that. Right, you know what I mean? Remember we saying this whole
racial issues among themselves, but the issue is that the only comments I heard come out of this person's mouth about Palestine and Palestinians were negative, were about how racist we are, were about
pause, how racist. So do you ever hear her even acknowledge anything? Acknowledge anything? All right, see, truth, right, is the basis of trust. Did you hear me? Truth, right? Okay. The negative, and the negative comments, at least you let us know what these negative comments were like, is how racist. See now, when I saw this video on Aquarius Wave channel, I said, wow, we had just did a video about like, slavery and the Palestinian situation and how Palestine played a role in that region of the world. And this is going back remember, history is prologue, right? The problem is that a lot of people support a lot of things that if they know the history. I mean, they'll support, like some Negroes will support the Klan, right? If they didn't know the history behind it, right?
How slavery persisted until the 20th century in Palestine, which is such an uneducated take, by the way. It was not exclusive.
She didn't say it wasn't true. You notice that? She didn't say, oh, that's a lie. No, she said it's an uneducated take. A what? Uneducated take. See, because when you're educated, you can spin it around. You can use sophistry. You can use words because, that's what, like when Bob Marley said, right? Building more churches and university, every day graduating more thieves and murderers.
To black people, and it was not done mostly by Palestinians. So only comments I heard come out of this person's mouth about Palestine and Palestinians were negative, were about how racist we are, were about how slavery persisted until the 20th century in Palestine, which is such an uneducated take, by the way. It was not exclusive to black people, and it was not done mostly.
Pause. You hear what she said? You know what I mean? So what she's doing is she can't dismiss. She knows that there's much truth to even what was said. She can't dismiss outright. That's a lie. Somebody, that's a lie. That never no, that didn't. No, it wasn't just black people. There was some other people too. Well, you know, like slavers, it's like people who are merchants, right? Whatever merchandise they have, that's what they're gonna do business with. You know what I'm saying? But there's a particular kind of merchandise that they really like to have, and that's the main merchandise. You know what I'm saying? Notice how she tries to minimize. She tries to minimize the fact. Let's go.
By Palestinians. So I believe these conversations being hosted by a person who came to Palestine with biases against Palestinians.
Wait. Now she says that this alleged black woman, I know this is a black woman. Now, it was a video of an Ethiopian, a few videos, but there's one particular Ethiopian woman over, I think, in Saudi, right? And she had, she was married, well, not the Ethiopian woman, but there was like the Arab, the Mohammedan guy. He had like a wife. I don't know what she was, but it was like either Arab wife or one from the Philippines or whatever. But all indoctrinated into that, Mohammedanism, right? And it was abusing. I mean, we've seen these videos. Others seen the video. They might not be so easily. They used to be on YouTubes and everything. A few of them, I think, I had archived from back in the days. I may have to try to find those archives now. Just to bring out those facts. But everyone who knows it's true. I mean, there's a whole movie, an Ethiopian film. Hopefully they do some subtitles and some of y'all can check it. It's very good. It's called Hiwet in the Waza. Hiwet in the Waza. Hiwet is like life. Hiwet, life in the Waza. Life like it's like not a joke. It's more like a nightmare. You know what I mean? It's like life like a nightmare. You know what I mean? But notice what she says right here, right? I know
to black people, and it was not done mostly by Palestinians. So I believe.
Wait. So it was not done mostly. You hear what she says? She says it was not done mostly. You have to get a it was not done mostly by Palestinians. Now, if I pause this video right now and I type in just slavery in Palestine, are they going to say no such thing? That never happened. I say slavery, black people enslaved in Palestine. Do you think they'll say no? That never happened. And it wasn't just black people. I mean, what kind of crap is that? So you can see how she is minimizing, she's parsing. That's what she said. It's not an educated take. An educated take. What was that supposed to mean? An educated take. It's like we're filming a movie or something. That's why when Ashriel said this seems like a scam. This seems like a whole scam right here, right?
These conversations being hosted by a person who came to Palestine with biases against Palestinians were so dangerous to Palestinians and...
Pause. How does she know that this person came to Palestine, right? And one of the 7 people, right? And we really, like I say, once again, we need to find out if these people are okay. Right, because when Ashriel said that they look for if there's a other side, like they said there's always 2 sides of a story, right? To get the other side of the story, because it's sometimes the one that speaks first, right? We think is a truthful one, so we're just getting her quote take on the story, right? Back it up one more time, just a little bit.
So I believe these conversations being hosted by a person who came to Palestine with biases against Palestinians were so dangerous to Palestinians and ultimately to black Palestinian solidarity. The most ironic part about all of this is the fact that we sat and had dinner with Afro-Palestinians in Palestine. We sat in...
When you say Afro, is basically another way to say African. Right, when we talk about like Hebrew, often we say like the language they call Hebrew is an Afro-Shemitic language. To say like it's African-Shemitic. So that means if the language of the scripture is African-Shemitic, and then we ask ourselves, well, what were the Israelites and the Hebrews like? That means they must have been African-Shemitic people. I just want to point that out. And notice the Afro is the first part. You see what I'm saying? Not the second part. You get that, don't you? Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's hear her out a little more.
Broke bread with the family who runs that, being hosted by a person who came to Palestine with biases against Palestinians.
Pause. You see, they make accusation. Now, here's the thing that caught me about this video. The only time I heard Palestinian like telling this many lies and everything and twisting stuff up was against the so-called white Jews or the other Jews. You say, you know, first they come for the blacks and the Jews, or first they come for the Jews and the blacks, and we already understand that, or we should understand that. I'm talking about in reality. Like, there's a lot of things, okay, this is going to happen, and there's this false prophecy and that false prophecy. No. We're talking about, let's look at real history. See, if we want to tell what real prophecy is like, we have to look at real history. You know what I mean? Real history, the real, the lived experience. Right? So she says, hosted by a person who came to Palestine with bias. How do you know this? Right? Because she pointed out a fact, right, concerning that. And what's so interesting, when this video came around, we just did a video, so you might see a video speaking about like the slave trade, Palestine, and check it out on our channel. I forget the exact name of it, because sometimes we do those videos, you know, people are not really interested in it, you know, or, you know, however it goes. I know some of y'all, I'm not talking about some of the Chabarim, you know what I'm saying? But we do know some videos, we'll see how you like this one right here. A little bit more right here, but she's claiming, alleging, right? You know what I mean? But, you know, broad is the way that leads to destruction. So a lot of people got a lot of views. Broad is the way, right? And people say, oh, they must be right, because look, a lot of people, right? You know, a lot of sheep will go over the cliff, you know, with one sheep, bad, and the other ones follow right over. But she's saying this one came, she makes an accusation but gives no proof of it, right? They came to power, she came with bias, right? And then she goes on.
Were so dangerous to Palestinians and ultimately to Black Palestinian solidarity. The most ironic part about all of this is the fact that we sat and had dinner with Afro-Palestinians in Palestine. We sat.
We would call this, right, because I don't know about you, but we could say this is a white Palestinian here, right? See, this is basically another white black issue, right? And she is the one who's bringing this out right here, right? Not that, hey, these people wasn't the right people and thank you for coming, but, you know, and just left it. But she is ranting. She's on this rant here. And it's what she's saying that's so telling. Like I said, the last time I seen, you know, Palestinians like go ham against anybody like this, but also knowing, you know, the truth and history, you know, with this much lies and twists and turns, playing on hearts and minds, playing on your feeling. It's like a con person, right? Is when they're talking about the state of Israel or the Jews or whatnot like that. And that's telling. That is very telling, right? The handwriting is on the wall.
And broke bread with the family who runs the Afro-Pali Center in Jerusalem. They are Black. They are.
You know, look what she does right here. Look what she does right here. This is like kind of tokenism. I won't call this tokenism. Not because they were just Afro-Pali, but it's how she's spinning this. Well, look who we had here, right? This should prove something. Listen, Black people here in the Americas and the Caribbean, but mainly even here in the Americas, some things we just know. It's almost like it's in our DNA. You know what I'm saying? Some things that we just know. So we know, like when you got a Negro hostage. You know what I'm saying? But they're playing, you know, like, you know, because what are they gonna say? Please, you know, remember the movie Get Out? You remember the Get Out? Get Out? The sunken place, right? But notice what she does right here. Back it up a little bit.
Palestinians in Palestine. Okay. He sat and broke bread with the family who runs the Afro-Pali Center in Jerusalem. They are Black.
Pause. The Afro-Pali Center, where is it? In Jerusalem. Interesting, Jerusalem. I mean, I know it's still a disputed city and everything like that, but now notice what she does right here.
Visibly black, and yet they are in Palestine. He sat and broke bread with the family who runs the Afro-Pali Center in Jerusalem. They are black. They are visibly black, and yet they are Palestinians in Palestine. He sat and broke bread with the family who runs the Afro-Pali Center in Jerusalem. They are black. They are visibly black, and yet they are highly respected in the Palestinian community for the work that they do for Palestinians. I even talked to the chef at our hotel in the
Listen. Even Old Man Fiddler, remember Old Man Fiddler is grits, dummy? I said, what's that? Remember Kutin Kinte, he's in the thing, he's like, what's the slop? And old Fiddler is like, there's grits, this is grits, dummy. It's grits, right? Even the butler was highly respected for what he did, right? Isn't that true? Right? Even the mammy in the kitchen, she was highly respected for what she, for what she did, right? What do you mean by that, right? Listen, if I have a servant and the servant serves me, I mean, of course, I'm gonna dishonor, I'm gonna diss them, right? She's not really saying nothing, right? But she is saying a whole lot, not by what she's saying, right? But what it means that she's really saying.
Last couple of days, who was a political prisoner. He had just gotten out of prison 2 months before we arrived in Palestine. And he told us that he sat side by side with an Afro-Palestinian, son of the couple who runs the Afro-Pali Center. He sat with him in prison, and he was shocked when I asked him about racism in Palestine, because he was like, those are my brothers. I don't care what color they are.
Pause. She asked this guy, right, who sat side by side in prison with the guy who ran the Afro-Pali Center in Jerusalem, yeah? And so she asked him about racism. He's like, what? Racism? I don't care. No. I'm asking you about race. I'm not asking you about your person. You see how? So the question sounded like an objective question. Tell me about racism, amongst, Afro-Pali and all that, right? And he's been saying, well, I don't care because he's my brother. Okay. It's like the Klan man that says he has, some black friends. You know what I'm saying? It's like one of those kind of things.
During this trip, I sat with Palestinians and I told them, talk to me bluntly. I'm a Palestinian. I'm not going to judge our community. Talk to me about race.
That says it all right there. We could really just stop this right here. What did she say? She says, I am not going to judge my community. So if your community is wrong, she's not going to judge the community. That's what she has been doing right here in this particular video. Not holding her own community accountable. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? I mean, nobody can change the past, the history, right? But we're talking about today, talking about now, right? And if today, now, with so-called so much at stake, her not being truthful, right? How can we trust her?
Racism in Palestine, and every single one of them was like, I don't care what color they are. During this trip, who runs the Afro-Pali Center, he sat with him in prison, and he was shocked when I asked him about racism in Palestine, because he was like, those are my brothers. I don't care what color they are. During this trip, I sat.
Pause for a moment. This is just nonsense. This is nonsense. Tell me about racism. You know what I mean? Even you say, well, what about black people? We have our own biases, right? Even if it's the so-called hate that hate produce. You think we're going to say, well, tell us about that? Well, I don't care. No, tell us about it. Not your personal. Tell us, have you seen it? Have you witnessed it? Right? Because you see the trick. You see the trick right there.
With Palestinians, and I told them, talk to me bluntly. I'm a Palestinian. I'm not going to judge our community. Talk to me.
You see what I'm saying? I'm not going to judge our that clip right there. I'm not going to judge our community, right? I'm not. So because she's not going to judge her community, even though many of the black so-called friends or these black people, like I said, once again, every time I think about them, I'm like, did they even, if they really existed, did they even return to America all right? You know, I thought about it. You know, it's like when those thoughts kind of come up in your head, you're like, yeah. And then Ashriel says, well, they tried to find if there's any more information. So he concludes that this is likely a scam, right? This was something that was put out there to somehow maybe provoke maybe more support, or like to guilt trip. This is like the kind of guilt trip, like Palestinian, tries to guilt trip black people, right? Guilt trip Palestinian, guilt trips, right? This was attempted, but it really backfired, right? It really backfired, and backfired so bad that they had to pull it down, even though it went viral. So I don't know whether that platform it was on was monetized or whatever else like that. It definitely, if it was monetized, she got some money for the Palestinian, and the Afro-Palestinian. I don't know how, in these ways, you know what I mean? Do you think if it was reversed and we as black people have been enslaving her people, you know what I'm saying? And had some of her people like amongst us, like as token people that's still, amongst us, right? And there was still, some of those same old time vibes. You know why some of those same old time vibes are there, but they covered up for the cameras, right? Is because nothing ever happened that really, how can I say, the bully got to get knocked down. You got to knock out the bully. You got to knock down the bully. You know what I'm saying? If the bully never get knocked down, but then bullying becomes a bad thing, the bully is going to try to act like, hey, I'm not a bully. I'm just a... But the bully will still have this kind of passive aggressive behavior. The bully will still be doing bullyism, right? But doing it in a slightly different way, right? Sometime when nobody's around, you'll see the bully full blown bully, right? And you can tell she's holding back, but it's coming through, right? It's almost like violence in lies, right?
About racism in Palestine, and every single one of them was like, what is there to say? Like, racism exists in every community, yes, but in Palestine?
You see how they try to do? You're going to learn something about strategy. And it's not just her here. It's like, you remember one time as black people, we still have things that we share in common as a group, but there's even sometimes a little more individuality, you know what I mean, like expressed because of just how things are today than before. Where like back in the days, it's like they say, like if somebody's child was acting out, then another parent could discipline them because it was like they share things in common. I'm saying that if you really pick up on what she's saying, how she's saying it, it tells you about their groupthink, right? Not just right in this situation, but if we study this situation, we can begin hopefully to see through the lies, right, against Israel, right? And we're not saying that everything the state of Israel is doing is good and true, but just in this situation, because one thing connects with the next, right? One thing does connect with the next, right? Because in a sense, right, if black people had more power in a sense, and we exercised the power we had, right? Even like we as Judaized Jews as well, then you'll see them, they will turn on, the guns are turned against. That's why I say we got to pray for our communities over there, right? Because when they ask about racism, it shows that the people, they have not really even confronted it. They don't even want to address it, right? To say, yes, we have a problem, let's confront it. You know what I mean? One thing we could say even about the so-called European, so-called Jew or the other Jews, they have, right? And they still are because it's still going on and one-to-ones, you know what I'm saying? So they still have to deal with it, right? While we can also point to other periods of cooperation, right? And sometimes even sincere cooperation, we can also point to times of conflict, right? But you know what? One would not act like it doesn't exist. You see, she's trying to, it happens everywhere. Racism exists everywhere. Those poor black people are just down pressed everywhere. Yeah, right? And Mohammedans and others came into our continent, as they call it, right? Africa. And we see even today in the 21st century Libya, right? Where enslavement is going on right in broad daylight. So you have some black people that will get out there with placards and flags talking about the Palestinian situation and won't even bat an eye or consider, right? I'm saying, like, what do they gain from that when black people, even in Africa, and some of these same Mohammedan and Arab countries like Libya, are going through the same slavery today, and it was not until the 20th century the United Nations and others put pressure on many of these so-called Arab nations, and Palestine was like it was like a crossroads, like a marketplace, a crossroads. You know what I'm saying? You know, between the East and between the West, right? So she tries to really soft soap it.
When I asked him about racism in Palestine, because he was like, those are my brothers. I don't care what color they are. During this trip, I sat with Palestinians and I told them, talk to me bluntly. I'm a Palestinian. I'm not going to judge our community. Talk to me about racism in Palestine. And every single one of them was like, what is there to say? Like, racism exists in every community, yes, but in Palestine, it's actually few and far between. Because the issue of race
is few and far between. Now, I don't know what you mean by few. I don't know what you mean by far, right? But this is wild.
It's so much more complicated in a place like Palestine. And
hold on. So race is so much more complicated in a place like. So you see how she begins off. I think you got it. Like she knew, like she knows black people, right? You know, like she even acted like she knew these people, right? She knew these people, and then the people came along and they surprised her, right? They end up just surprising her at the end. Right.
I've been involved in black activism for many years. Palestine, it's actually few and far between. Because the issue of race is so much more complicated in a place like Palestine. And I have been involved in black activism for many years. And I know that when I am in black spaces, it is...
Pause a moment. She's been involved in black activism. What the hell? What's she talking about? BLM? Oh, I mean, what the hell? I mean, she's been involved in what? Right? And she's talking about being in black spaces. Y'all can tell where this language is from. You know? It's almost like she's reading a script in a sense, but let's go.
Not my place to call out issues within the black community, especially when those people are being slaughtered.
What's a moment? It's not her place to call out issues in the black community. So why are you calling out these black people? The black people want to have a little space. Couldn't the black people have a little space in the Palestinian space? Like they, you know, even when they wanted to speak together, she, right, and they, no doubt, felt threatened, right? Why? Right? Why? Right? And I think probably what really maybe irked these people, right, is that the denial, you know what I'm saying? The utter denial, the dismissal, with the patronizing behavior, right? This kind of geopolitical narcissism, right? Coupled with a competitive jealousy, right? Oh, look how you black people in America, y'all at the top and right below the Israelis and everything else. That tells you a lot. That tells you a lot. And guess what? That's what makes them mad. That's what makes them mad. Right? Now, because there's a lot of black people caught up in the liberalism that supports, right, that gets easily caught up in these things, and they do go out there and then give a lot of support to, you know, they begin to believe like this woman here that, well, this is expected. This is how y'all must act. Y'all must support our cause. But it's like we used to say, the old timers said, what have y'all done for us lately? Right? What have you done for us lately? Right? For real. I mean, really, what have they done for, what have they spoken up? Right? I mean, even when the Shah of Iran, right, back in the days when they pushed him out, they took over, and the Ayatollah and the so-called Islamic Persian Revolution came in. Right? Some of the Arabs don't even like the Persians, and they're all Muslims. You got to peep that game too, right? But they had let the black people go. And I remember back in the days, my father, my earthly father, you know, Yahweh Eloheinu, you know, rest his soul. You know, he basically, you know, had showed me that when they had let the blacks go, right? One, I think with the Ayatollah, they had something saying about how the black people had suffered a lot, so forth and so on. I'm not saying that means that we support, the Islamic revolution, but it was something refreshing to at least have somebody just acknowledge something just as it is, let these ones go. That's that, right? Not trying to make no bones, right, about it. But then the Persians are different than the Arabs. The Persians aren't the Arab, but it just so happened that they're a lot of them in the same so-called Mohammedan religion. But
I am in black spaces. I am there to observe, to learn, to be an ally, not to call out black people. By the way, these same people who sat there and talked.
Pause a moment. She says that when she's in black spaces, don't you know social media is a black space? She's calling out black people. Look at the hypocrisy. She is calling out black people, right? And here's the problem. We can't even hear the other side of the story. Brothers and sisters, let's pray that these black people are all right. Maybe, they might have been so traumatized, right? If they even have returned, we don't know who they are. Somebody need to ask them, who are these people? She might say, oh, I'm not dealing with them. I can't speak to them. I wouldn't recommend them to. So it's either this is a scam, a lie, or if these people really went over there, something might have happened to them, right? Who knows, right? She brought out this story. We would have never known it unless she brought it out. Now it's peaking, and a lot of our interest.
All this shit about how racist Palestinians are not my place to call out issues within the black community, especially when those people are being slaughtered. When I am in black spaces, I am there to observe, to learn, to be an ally, not to call out black people. By the way, these same people who sat there and talked all this shit about how racist Palestinians are did.
Pause. Okay, is there racism among Palestinians? And why don't you even want to address it? Right? I'm not talking about the black Palestinian, the Afro-Palestinians. That's like putting a target on their back, in a sense, like expecting them to say something. Right? Because when they say something, we come along and say, hey, tell us how racist it is. Because what they're going to say, yes, there's these things that happen, and then they have to go back and live with the people. You understand? You know what I mean?
Not hesitate to pose in front of a ginormous George Floyd mural painted by a Palestinian artist. They posed with that artist in front of the mural. Okay. And I bet they wouldn't dare look that artist in the face and say that he's racist. By the way,
a lot of times white people, and I'm not saying this to all white folks, but she's a white person, basically. Let's not make no bones about it. You know what I mean? And you say, oh, you saying because she looked. No. She has the same. We've seen this liberal psychological. It reminds me of some of the, how can we say, secular, even some secular Yehudi, some secular Jews. You know what I mean? Like in the whole liberal agenda. Even many of those that will go against their own thing. It's weird. It's really weird behavior, right? But she's talking about these ones posing in front of a giant George Floyd statue that was painted by a Palestinian artist, right? And they won't I bet you wouldn't call him racist. See, here's what happens amongst a lot of people who ain't like us, who are not like us, We can understand sometimes, okay, when you're saying that these people are racist, you're not talking about all of them, but you're talking about certain racist encounters or racism that you have witnessed, right? That means that we can say, yeah, it's like with white people, right? Right? Traditionally in history, even sometimes today, we might find some white people to be racist, and then we might know other white people that we're perfectly cool with. Right? We don't associate this with that, even though we know that they might be susceptible to the same thing. But you know what? They have at least proven themselves different, right? This woman here, we don't have no proof of who she are or who she be or what sort of circle she was in. All she's doing right here is trying to run down these alleged black people, right? These alleged black people that came over, how bad they were. Why were they bad? Because of racism, because they were witnessing, oh my goodness, maybe before, they thought, oh, racism is on the so-called Jewish side, Because they'll tell us that, oh, what's going on is racism against the Palestinian. But then, wait, you're saying that y'all are Arab, you're alleging yourself to be Shemitic too, right? So what's going on, right? Is it really racism, or is there something else going on? Part of what's going on is these lies. Right.
Go support that artist. He's Banksy.2 on Instagram. He's an incredible person, incredible artist who I'm still in communication with. He is struggling right now. His daughter is in the hospital, so please reach out and try to help in any way that you can. But I refused to pose in that picture with the rest of the group because literally an hour before that, they were making fun of Palestinians. We passed a mural that was supposed to be, I believe, of Nelson Mandela, but it wasn't the greatest art. And so it kind of looked like George Floyd, and they couldn't tell who it
Wait. You hear this? Did you hear this? Okay.
was. And they literally said, I'm so sick of these people. And yet they won't hesitate to pose in front of a George Floyd.
Wait. And they said, I'm so sick of it. We don't even know if she's even quoting these things in context. Right? But she even admits that it was supposed to be of this person, then look like that person. What do you think we're going to say? Oh, this is beautiful. This is good art if we don't think it's good. Right? You know, we say, man, that sucks. That sucks, man. That's how it is. Straightforward. Right? Is there racism to that? Or is it just a, like you go to a gallery, some artwork, some pieces you like, some you think is trash?
Mural for a social media photo op. Even when we were about to walk into a masjid, there were...
Hold on a moment. You heard what she said? For a photo, a social media photo op. Man, she said that with some vehemence. Right? Let's see right here.
We passed a mural that was supposed to be, I believe, of Nelson Mandela, but it wasn't the greatest art. And so it kind of looked like George Floyd, and they couldn't tell who it was. And they literally said, I'm so sick of these people. And yet they won't hesitate.
Yeah, because to us, if you're doing Nelson Mandela and it turns out to look like George Floyd, come on now. You know, I don't even use laugh track, but I need to get some laugh tracks because this is a joke, right? How are you not gonna know, right, the difference between Nelson Mandela and George Floyd, right? How are you gonna confuse the two of them? Oh, you see, in our experience, because remember, she tried to say, well, racism over there is different. They're looking at it from a Western lens, right? You know, some Western lens, right? Well, we're looking at it from our experience. And from our experience, they all look alike. You know what I'm saying? Am I not right? They all look alike, you know? Isn't that what often has been said? They all look alike, you know? And yes, even we as black people may be guilty of that with maybe other people we're not familiar with. But how can you not be familiar with somebody whose pictures all over, and these people are on social media to the nth degree, you know what I mean? So how are they not going to know the difference between George Floyd? Wait, they started out with Nelson Mandela, and then it ended up as George Floyd. I mean, and somebody's supposed to say, hey, this is great, you know what I mean? She thought she brought over some goofies. Nah, you're talking about black, you know, black people, we need to really be who we be, you know what I mean?
Hesitate to pose in front of a George Floyd mural for a social media photo op. Even when we were about to walk into a masjid, there were beggars outside the masjid who asked some people for money. And she made a comment about how, oh, notice how they're not asking the black people for money because they think all black people are poor. And I said, you don't know.
Wait, pause for a moment. So there's beggars outside of a masjid. Right outside of a masjid. I mean, isn't it like, well, I'm coming from a real Abrahamic faith, you know, Yahadu, you know what I mean? But, you know, isn't there something that you're supposed to do? Like, imagine if one went into a Knesset, or it's called a synagogue, right? Or you go into a church, and as you walk into the church, there's a whole bunch of begging people outside, right? You begin to think, because you say, well, Christ, what did Christ do? You know what I mean? And then if it's outside of a synagogue, you say, well, what does Moshe, Rabbeinu Moshe, what does he say? Right?
That those same people didn't ask, yet they won't hesitate to pose in front of a George Floyd mural for a social media photo op. Even when we were about to walk into a masjid, there were beggars outside the masjid who asked some people for money, and she made a...
Hold on a moment. Just go back. She said something here I just want to make a comment on. Oh, for a photo op. Isn't this video here a photo op? It went viral. Isn't that true?
Hesitate to pose in front of a George Floyd mural for a social media photo op. Even when we were about to walk into a masjid, there were beggars outside the masjid who asked some people for money. And she made a comment about how, oh, notice how they're not asking the black people for money because they think all black people are poor. And I said, you don't know that. Those same people didn't ask me, a Palestinian.
Hold on a moment. Black people were enslaved and still are being enslaved. I mean, to this very day. You see that? And this is like the elephant hiding, like, you know, in open sight. You know what I mean? You know, the elephant hiding in plain sight, right? And she said, oh, how do you know? You see how she's quick to defend Palestinians. But when the black people, right, are expressing their view, right, and their experience, she cannot, I can say, well, she can't sympathize because you have to be in the same situation, but she can't empathize, not even empathize, right?
Palestinian American for money. They're not assuming I'm poor. In fact, when they know you're American, you're immediately up here to them. They immediately assume you have money and that you're privileged in ways that they'll never experience. The reason that they didn't ask...
Wait, no. That's what it's all about, basically. That's what a lot of this is all about, right? Legalities, politics, money, privilege, and competitive jealousy. This is basically what it's about, right? And a lot of their point of view, their perspective is so narcissistic. It's just them, themselves, and them, right? And they really can't. And even when they have historically, and not even historically, because if it was like just back like hundreds of years ago or 100 years ago. No, these things are still persisting today, right, into the 21st century.
Some people for money had nothing to do with the fact that those people are black. They simply just approached a few people out of the entire group asking for money. I could ramble about this for hours because it was one of the most frustrating things of my life to watch people come from America to a place like Palestine. And
you see what it's really about. Do you see, right? Do you see? This is why when Martin Luther King said, and he said this to Harry Belafonte testified about it, that his fear was that he was integrating black people into a burning house, right? And then when they finally passed the civil rights bill, then they had the next year for like the immigration. They kind of put this as a rider statement. And this is what opened the door to a lot of different peoples that, you know, in the history of America, right, would have had no access, right? It's this sense like, oh, because we in America, you know, we got this, we got that. And notice how many of them land in our neighborhoods. And this is not to put bias, because the people are not all Palestinians. We're not saying that right there. But notice how most of these immigrant communities come to the black neighborhoods, so on and so on, right? And in a sense, one way or the other, we enriching them, right? Because of our spending power and because of our other historical, you could say, challenges, right? They are problematic, but they are challenges. See, a challenge we can overcome. A problem just remains a problem until it's solved.
Act like they're more oppressed than people literally living under occupation. And it's so ironic because the entire time I'm trying to find parallels between the lives...
Pause on that. I don't want to get into this part, but that whole idea there is false too, right? Talk about occupation. Right, occupation, right? Look at the centuries, just study the history, even before, during the Ottoman time. I don't know, some of you might not be into that, but the Ottoman Empire and all of that, so forth and so on, and these people were roaming around, you know, this area and everything. How were they then? How were they then? Right? See, if people come and can turn the desert green, now it's your desert. Now you want to...
Palestinians, between the racial profiling that I experienced as a Palestinian and the experiences of black people in America. I thought that this would be an opportunity for us to come together and understand each other better, not to create more division. But this is why some people are so...
Hold for a moment. But she here in this video, right, is an agent provocateur. She's talking about other people causing division, and yet, what do you think the point of this video was, huh?
Dangerous to the movement, not only to the pro-Palestinian movement, but also to Black activism. Because if I was somebody else, if I haven't already done so much work for the Black community, if I did...
You hear that shit? You hear that? Chara etze? I mean, did you hear? No. Did you hear what she just said? Right? She has done so much work for the Black community, for Black people. What the? Really? We don't know you. And then she says before that, she says that she's been racially profiled. Really? Racially profiled as what race? Like, if we didn't know she was a Palestinian, right? Just say, and you didn't know she was a Palestinian, and you see it, could she not pass? Right? I have seen certain Israelis that looks like her as well. I mean, just with his name, but a lot of this is just game. This is gameplay.
Already have a deep understanding of racial dynamics. This entire experience might have pushed me away from the Black community. But I know...
Wait, pause it for a moment. This would have pushed her away from the Black community? I mean, how can we verify anything that she says? Right? Well, push her away, right, from the Black community. And the lesson of this is
that these rotten tomatoes in the community do not represent the Black of racial dynamics. This entire
what did she just call the Black people? She called the Black people rotten tomatoes. Tomatoes are red, apples are red, reddish brown, like the ground. Okay, let's go on.
Experience might have pushed me away from the Black community. But I know that these rotten tomatoes in the community do not represent the Black community as a whole. One of the most ironic parts about all of this...
Wait. So why couldn't you tell them that, yeah, even amongst the racism that might be among the Palestinians, that's rotten tomatoes, and that doesn't represent the Palestinian community as a whole? That would have settled it, right? That would have settled it even to these Black friends, you know, if she had any empathy, right? You know.
That before making this video, I was sitting in a cafe in Amman, journaling my thoughts about this topic, and I got interrupted by a waiter at the restaurant who asked me where I'm from, and we started chatting, and it turns out he is Jamaican and Palestinian. But ultimately, I think if you have internal biases against Palestinians...
That's interesting there, just that whole Jamaican and Palestinian, right? I mean, we don't really know if this person really exists, but no doubt, perhaps, you know, but ain't that interesting? He asked her where she's from, and notice she didn't say...
Palestinians, you should not be going to Palestine. And if you don't want to acknowledge but ultimately, I think if you have internal biases against Palestinians, you should not be going to Palestine.
You know, and she may have a point there, and also remember that many of these and those like her and hers might also have certain biases against Black people. Imagine a group of people for how many, over 1,400 years, right, that they have wholesalely enslaved. Before even white supremacy among the European was white supremacy among the Arabs, right, and the Mohammedans. I mean, this is just a fact of it. And it's shared among many of those cultures, right? But here is where the, it's kind of interesting, this particular community right here. I'm not going to be long on this. We already been long in this, but let's just get this. She's saying that if you have these internal biases, you shouldn't go to Palestine, right? Do you think she has any internal biases, right? Like she said earlier, right? She will not judge her community. That means she's only going to seek to vindicate and justify, right, her community. Right? Even if they're wrong, she's going to justify them, right? So it's like she has like these two rules. Like she's done so much for the Black. Imagine that, right? Same thing they could say too, that they've done so much for the Palestinian community too, right? Like we said, we really need to see if these other people, these 7 people, the woman that was like a leader of the group, and these people really exist, right? If this thing really even happened, right? And if they are all right, right? Whether they were able to even return to America, right? You know, hopefully nobody stole their ID. You know.
And if you don't want to acknowledge the experiences of Palestinians in their entirety, then to be honest,
Pause. She doesn't want to acknowledge the experience of black people in their entirety. Right? She doesn't. Of black people. Right? She talked about how much she's done. Maybe she was in some protests. See, this is what happens, this liberal kind of mentality. It's a form of mental insanity. On a certain, it is. It really, really, really is. It's like the people that be protesting, right, for these ones, and then if they actually was over there, what will be done to them? You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm.
Don't need you as an ally. Seeing what Palestinians are going through only makes you think, yeah, no, we have it worse. When you're an American, you are not a true ally. And I will be talking more.
You know what he said? When you are an American, you are not a true ally. You see? Those parts need to be clip-farmed right there. If you are an American, you are not a true ally. Right? If you're a black American, that's what she's saying. You're not a true ally. Because the thing that I think that peeping is that from a distance, yeah, people support it. They'll see the propaganda, the deceptive, effective, but deceptive propaganda, and you know, people believe it and they get into it. But if they really get up close and personal, now we do have some coons. That's a whole other discussion. We kind of pointed to a potential one. I hope not, but I've heard some things he say. I'm like, yo, this guy's loony. Right? And he's a black guy. But anyway.
About the issue of people taking trips to Palestine with a limited understanding of Palestinians and Palestinian history. Because there were so many other issues with some of the people who went on this trip for all the wrong reasons.
So now that we've watched the entire video, I'll just tell you right off the bat that it sounds to me that this is absolutely fabricated. This story is absolutely untrue. She made this up and she had a different purpose for actually sharing this information in that way, because I went and I looked for the other side of the story, because this video went viral. And so because it went viral, most likely the people who were there would have given their side of the story of what actually happened, as opposed to allowing her to tarnish their name and to give this impression about people of African ancestry that's very far away from reality. So they would have given their side of the story. Nothing to be found. There's no video.
You hear what Ashriel Moore is saying. We don't owe these people or those people or any people, whether they're black or white, really anything. As black Americans, as black people here in the Americas or the Caribbean, right? We owe our God, you know, and we owe ourselves. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? But we don't owe, you know what I mean? We don't owe these people anything. And when they talk about being an ally, right? They all lie, right? All lie. But he's making a good point here, just a tad.
No written information, nada. And so not only that, the video is no longer even on her page when you go to the page. So I'm wondering, why did she take it down from her page then? But we're not going to even dwell on that, right? We're going to go right into the heart of it. First of all, what it sounds to me is that they brought these people to Israel or to the Palestinian Authority, the Palestinian territories, which, I mean, I'm confused because she says Palestine, and then she says that in Palestine, black and white Palestinians are less privileged than even black people who are not Palestinians and who are not. Where? In Israel, in the Palestinian territories? Where are you talking about? It sounds like she's jumping between the two, so I couldn't really follow. But now.
Yeah, and neither could we. There's more to this video. I don't want to play his whole video right here, though we commented especially on her portion, because as you know, they took down the video, can't be found, it's not out there. And a good point Ashriel made. He said that because the video had went viral, this whole thing was viral. Some of y'all might have picked up on it, some of y'all, because there's a lot of viruses out there. Hopefully you don't catch it. You know what I'm saying? But you know, picking up on this, right? the black people definitely, come on now. You don't think the black people would have been like, yo, we got to comment on that? There would have been a whole plethora of videos. I'm more really concerned as to whether these people, if there's any truth to the story, right? Whether, I want to know what their well-being is. You know what I mean? Are they all right? You know what I mean? Are they alive? I mean, for real. I mean, when you pick up on the venom, that's the only way I can say, the venom, right? And then the confusion. Like, even as Asher came in, he made a very good point. He makes some other very good points as well, but I want you to check it out for yourself. I want you to see it for yourself. There's some other good videos that he has on this subject matter and other related subject matters. You know what I'm saying? And as more of the once lost now found really recognize really who we are, right? You see, that's the half. That's the half of the story that has never been told. Now, I want to just sum up with this right here. Right? Now, she may say, oh, that's not Palestine. But that is still your people, right? What's happening in Libya, North Africa. He also addresses that, Ashriel, in his video as well. And Ashriel, hopefully you check this out. I'm going to try to hit you up on the WhatsApp. Hopefully you're still on that link. And also, once again, Malka Makeda, Malka Makeda, Queen Makeda, thank you also very much for that link right there. Bruh, keep doing what you're doing. Ani, anachnu, mikaweh, you know what I mean? Ani mikaweh, hakol beseda, imakem, is all well with you, Baruch Hashem. But here, 27 million black people are still owned as slaves today in Muslim countries. No liberal ever complains about it. No liberal ever talks about it. You talk about the untouchable. You know what I mean? And this right here, we actually seen the video of this. This is like a still from a video, right? A still from a video. You know what I mean? And they don't want to talk about this. You see what I'm saying? They don't want to talk about this. You know what I'm saying? And there's a very good reason, right? Why they don't want to talk about this, right? It's the half of the story, right, that they won't tell you about, but you better get to know the truth for yourself. Shalom, Chaverim, Shalom,
Judah Society.